What's up everyone, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic and I have a collection update for you. So this one is an interesting combination of stuff that I picked up through different avenues. I picked up some stuff at my local record store, also ordered some stuff on Amazon and Bandcamp, and even did a pre-order for the new Cadaveric Incubator, and then did some shopping outside of that because, again, impulse control. Yeah, I thought I was going to go on there and not buy anything else. That's not going to happen. And a really interesting acquisition came courtesy of one of our followers. He actually sent a care package that included a bunch of CDs and some other material. One of those you're actually looking at right now, but I'll get to the relevance of that here in a moment. So let's just get into it. This is a pretty good size stack and there's a lot of cool stuff in here. 16, Dream Squasher. This is the 8th full length from these guys. I believe it's their 4th since reforming in 2007. This is an awesome sludge band from LA that blended lots of cool elements of groove metal and hardcore, and pretty much this is exactly what it is on here. Their last one was a little bit more atmospheric. This one pretty much strips it back and goes right to the sludge again. This is just a pummeling collection of sludgy songs, especially Me and the Dog Die Together. I ended up chanting that last refrain of the title at the end. It's just so damn catchy. But you get more than just what they usually do here. The song Sadlands is very dirgy and actually has some cleaner vocals. Like, they're very gruff, very sludge metal, like, you know, think Kirk from Crowbar, but tuneful, and the whole mood of the album really shifts on there. There's even a harmonica in there. It just feels like it didn't come from LA. It feels like it came from the swamps in Louisiana or Florida or wherever there's a swamp. Wherever there's a swamp in the South, that's where that song seems to lurk. But solid album. I really like this. I like the last one too, though they're very different albums. The mood's kind of similar, but the approach is a little bit different. This one is raw, gritty, all for the riffs. Production here is just nasty and heavier than hell. The vocals are layered and have weird filters on them, and it's just like a really cathartic listen, and I really dug it. So if you've never jammed 16, check out this album. Check out, honestly, any of their albums. I really like pretty much all their stuff. But yeah, good stuff. Check it out. Dipygus Bushmeat. This is the second album from this Cali-based death metal act. This is some nasty, sludgy, disgusting death metal. And man, I mean, ooh, it's absolutely filthy sounding. The production here is just so damn murky. The vocals are just nasty growls, or very like cavernous sounding. And I was shocked to actually find it was a female vocalist because they are low, they are ugly. And her name is Clarissa, and she growls it all. That's a terrible joke. I made it. I can live with it. The guitars have, it's kind of an odd tone. It sounds, I don't know, like kind of buzzy and fuzzy. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's very heavy. The riffs pretty much reek of old school death metal. I mean, lots of autopsy and incantation. I would say this is caveman metal. Like, it's just very primal. It's very ugly. But there's some really cool, like, technical moments on here too, and some interesting melodies. This is just a nasty release, and the weird ambience on here. The opening and closing tracks, Ape Sounds and Ape Sounds 2. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think there are ape sounds on there. There's also some weird horror synths. I don't know, it's like the ghost of Harambe kind of haunts this one. But I mean, some of these song titles are pretty interesting. Osteodontochoretic Savagery. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty badass. And Long Pig Feast. I know what Long Pig is. That's a questionable feast. Anyway, this is a filthy, murky listen. I almost felt like I needed to clean out my ears because there might have been some residue just from listening to this album. It's pretty awesome. I need to check out their first album too. I hear that one's pretty good. But yeah, if you've never checked out Dipygus before, this is just a gross beast of an album. And if you love primal, nasty death metal, check it out. Homewrecker, Circle of Death. This is the second album from this Ohio-based hardcore, metalcore, death metal kind of hybrid act. Now, before I get into this release, I was unaware of the fact that two of the members have been kicked out of the band due to sexual misconduct accusations, and they seem kind of legit. So yeah, I didn't know about that. I'm not going to offer any sort of apologetics for that sort of behavior. That's complete horseshit. But I am just going to go over the music, which is pretty much as advertised. It is that blend. It sounds like Integrity meets Dismember. It kind of has that raw, almost kind of HM2 sound. Quick, short, violent songs. Lots of groove to it. That sort of hardcore backbone to it is just absolutely nasty. It kind of reminds me of the first time I ever jammed Power Trip, except maybe less thrashy. There is just a little bit of thrash to this. It really reminds me a lot of like those 90s bands that I got into courtesy of Victory Records. Like it kind of has that sort of energy to it. It's short. I think it is under a half an hour, but it is bombastic. It does not waste any time. It just gets right down to the riffs and the pummeling. Now this band is still around, I guess, in some form or another. I think it's down to one member, and I think that member is also one of the ones that was accused, so I guess he wasn't kicked out of the band. I just guess everyone else left, and I believe one of those members was also a member of Scorched, which they're kind of on hiatus now, and I don't know, the whole thing, it sucks because you guys wrote good music, you just had a lot of shitty behavior in there, and it sucks for those who didn't partake in any of that shit, and now they have to kind of suffer with all the other shit that those guys did. I don't know, it's all fucked up. But I would still say, check it out, just to hear what they sound like. Lard, Pure Chewing Satisfaction. The second full length from this industrial metal punk hardcore supergroup. Pretty much Ministry and Jello on vocals from Dead Kennedys, and it's exactly what you'd think that would sound like. Now, I actually covered their first full length, The Last Temptation of Reed, which I absolutely loved. This one, I pretty much loved just as much. In fact, I think some of these songs are a little bit more straight and to the point, and the point is generally hilarious socio-political takes on, well, whatever was going on in the 90s, but I think some of the stuff is pretty applicable to now. But of course, there is Jello's snide sarcasm and cynicism all over this. The songs pretty much sound like Ministry, except just like a little bit more, I guess, accessible to a degree. Not really, though. I mean, it's still really heavy. It's just maybe less grating than Ministry can be. But I mean, you can definitely tell it's Jello behind the lyrics and the song titles. War Pimp Renaissance, the opening track, which is an absolute banger. I love it. I Want to Be a Drug-Sniffing Dog. Peeling Back the Foreskin of Liberty. Man, Jello, you have a way with words. But this also features, I believe, members of Revolting Cocks. I believe Mike Scotia from Rigor Mortis, and he also played a Ministries on here. He contributes some guitar work and leads. Fun album. I dig this. I love old school industrial metal, and I like punk, so this was an easy one for me, and I love Jello. Jello's just a wild band. I love Dead Kennedys. I still need to get all the stuff he did with Melvins and all his other projects, because that man seems perpetually busy. But yeah, if you've never jammed Lard, I recommend both albums. They're both a lot of fun. Strongly recommend this one too. I'm still jamming the hell out of it. So definitely check this one out. Reveler, Festering Decompositions. This is a compilation of demos and I believe one EP. This came out in 2021. This is a death metal act from Dunwich in the US. I don't know which Dunwich. I'm sure there's like probably multiple ones. I'm not sure. That's all it said on Encyclopedia Metallum, so they're from Dunwich. We'll go with that. Now, I got this one in the Metalhead box, and we have a lot of tracks on here. I believe this was over an hour's worth of music, and this is straight up old school, very cavernous, ugly death metal. Now, the thing on here, and kind of the thing with compilations, when you do a compilation of different demos and EPs and just other unreleased tracks, is the varying recording quality across the board. Now, the first 3 tracks I thought sounded really good, but then some of their other demos sound extra raw and like really like muddy sounding to the point where it's kind of indistinct. Stylistically, this is very akin to, you know, Cannibal Corpse, Autopsy, or like a Cerebral Rot or Witch Vomit, like very, very old school, very early 90s, even late 80s style of death metal. Not a tremendous amount of variety though. Like across this compilation, you really didn't get like the sense of like the band sort of like, you know, changing their sound, evolving ever so slightly. Like the main thing that changed, it seemed, was the recording quality over the time. Though I do like what they do. It's really good. It's straight up old school death metal. I love that shit. I just, you know, didn't get the sense of like songwriting growth or maturity along the way. That was kind of the main thing. I love the over-the-top vocals. They are wild. You get howls, growls, screams. They're all super cavernous. And the samples that are on here in terms of like ambiance or whatever you want to call it, they're gross. And that's awesome. I'm reasonably sure the opening track, Disgorged Vicious Spews, that might be a sample from Gates of Hell when the chick pukes all her guts out. God, I hope I can find a gif of that to put up. One of my favorite scenes in that entire movie, just because it's so gross, and then the priest squeezes out dude's brains, because that's the whole brain squeeze in the back of the head. I never got that, whatever. But yeah, this is just some nasty horror-themed death metal, and it's a good compilation. I think it kind of runs a little long. They packed a lot of material on here, but for the most part, pretty solid. So yeah, definitely check this out. The Bleeding, Rise Into Nothing. This is the latest EP from this English death thrash band, and this is a really interesting EP. The one new track in here, Rise Into Nothing, the title one, is actually a collaboration they did with Hellripper, which Hellripper is badass. They were on my year-end list last year. I love that last album. I need to get more of their stuff. He worked with this band, and they came up with, I think, quite possibly one of the best songs in their entire short career. Granted, they only have 2 other albums before this. And oddly enough, I believe I've gotten both of them through the Metalhead box. So thank you, Metalhead box, for those, because these guys are just straight up awesome death thrash. Now, the other tracks, we have a re-recording of a song on the last album, which the re-recording sounds good, though I don't necessarily like re-recordings, but it's a really good song. And then a raw edition of a previous song, and then a demo remix of another song, both of which sound good. And then we have 3 live tracks, which these guys sound really good live, though I'm not entirely sure this was like live in a studio or in front of a crowd. It's kind of hard to tell whether or not they did this in the studio and they just had some people in the studio and they, you know, cheered and such, or this was in like a small club before the outbreak. Either way, sounds good. Like, I mean, it has all the hallmarks of death thrash. You have like all those galloping chugs that scream thrash metal, and then vicious vocals. Like, this guy has a really shrill scream, and I mean, it's nasty. And, you know, that good kind of balance between like blast beats and then, you know, like more straightforward like thrash rhythms. Good stuff. I mean, it's death thrash. I love death thrash. They did a solid job. That new song is absolutely killer, and I definitely want to hear more from these guys in the future. And if you guys want to do more collaborations with Hellripper, I am all for it, because that was sweet. So yeah, definitely check this out. It's just fast and angry, and it's awesome. And it has Hellripper. Added bonus. Check it out. All right, now these next 4 are actually part of the gift package we got from one Andrew Howard. Thank you very much for sending this stuff. It was really cool of you to just do that. And there was some pretty cool stuff in here. Now, of course, wearing this Beercan Pentagram shirt, and that is one of the ones he sent me here. This is their demo from 2019, A Triumph of Poor Taste. This is their debut demo. They are from Wisconsin, and that is pretty much where all these bands are from. This is an interesting mix. Now, looking it up, they said it was a mix of groove metal, stoner metal, and thrash metal. But honestly, I hear a lot of sludge metal in there. And this is a really interesting sounding demo. A lot of this kind of reminded me of Acid Bath, but like Acid Bath mixed with like a really vicious hardcore band like Vision of Disorder or something like that. The songs are frantic. They're all over the place. The vocalist on here, it sounds like an absolute madman. Shrieking, growling. There's kind of that warbled singing, which again, that kind of reminded me a bit of Dax in terms of his approach vocally. The songs just pretty much go from musical fit to the next musical fit. This is a very aggressive, kind of strange listen, but I really dug it. And I mean, honestly, if I wasn't into bands like Acid Bath, this might be a bit much, but I dug pretty much all this. So yeah, definitely check this one out. And as an added bonus, I have a flag for this band now. Ta-da. A giant Beercan pentagram to put up. Wait, no, maybe this way. That's better. I don't know. Either way, pretty cool. And since I'm reaching down here, I might as well show he got me another shirt, though I don't recognize this band. What do we have here? Dead Soul Symphony. I've never heard of this band, so I'm going to have to look them up. I try to make sure I at least listen to the band before wearing the shirt. And then I assume the name of their album is human disease, or they just wanted to put that on there. But yeah, pretty cool looking. Chaos, tentacles, planet Earth. All right. And there is another flag here too, which I assume is also for Dead Soul Symphony. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, imagine that. So yeah, 2 really cool flags, 2 really cool shirts, and oddly enough, I didn't get that CD in there, but I got some other stuff in here though. Desolate Void, Self-Medicated Psychotherapy. This is their debut album in 2006, also from Wisconsin, and well, I mean, this one is actually kind of related to the Beercan one because this actually features 2 members. Now, this band actually broke up in 2012, and this is, I guess, sort of like the groundwork they laid for Can Pentagram. It's almost like a continuation of the sound, though I think Beercan's a little bit better, which that's a weird sentence to say out loud. But this is, again, kind of that same style, though it's a little bit more raw. The production's not quite as good. And I think this one, instead of going with like a little bit more like tongue-in-cheek humor, they went more with like disturbing, you know, subject matter and like, you know, dark stuff. It works. I mean, it has a totally different vibe than Beercan. Beercan feels a lot more fun, but this does have some cool stuff to it that I did like. I think the guitars and the bass are a little bit warmer in here. That stoner metal sound kind of comes out a bit. The vocals are a little bit wilder on here. I think he actually kind of reined it in maybe just a little bit on Can Pentagram, and I mean, trust me, not much, but I think that actually worked better in terms of their overall sound. This is an interesting release. I'm, you know, not as big of a fan of this as I am of Can Pentagram. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. Now, the vocalist is actually one of the members that carried over into Can Pentagram, and I think he's doing a lot better in that project than this, because this one is just really wild and feral. Now, granted, I like it. It's just kind of an unhinged performance, but I think the little bit that he reined in on Beercan actually kind of made it stick out more, and the fact that those clean vocals are odd, but they're more well pronounced, just makes for a better listen, at least in my opinion. But I strongly recommend checking it out. It's a weird listen, but it's pretty damn cool. So yeah, check that out. And then also related to this package, we had a split from Crimes Against Humanity Recordings / Distribution, based out of Wisconsin. Bit of a theme here. This actually features songs from Desolate Void, The Last Van Zandt, and The Parish. Now, the Desolate Void songs, I think, on this are actually a little bit better than they were on the full length. A little bit more refined, a little bit punkier too, and I think that sort of energy kind of ramped them up. The Last Van Zandt is kind of like a catchy crust punk band. They definitely have the shortest songs in here, but they're very energetic and very bombastic. I couldn't find anything on them in terms of like bio stuff, but I like them. And then The Parish is almost more of a death doom project. But it's weird because like some of the riffs on there really scream stoner metal, but you have these like deep death metal vocals on there. It's a very interesting atmosphere because some of those riffs kind of scream more trippy than doomy. But I liked all the stuff that was on here. It was actually a really cool split. And again, you know, thank you for sending me this stuff. This was really, really cool. But yeah, definitely check this out. I'm going to see if I can find links to each of these bands. If not, hopefully this whole sampler. But yeah, definitely check this out. And then this is the last one in the batch that he sent me. This is Feast of Moloch. This is their 2018 demo. And this is a raw one-man black metal project, also from Wisconsin. And unfortunately, this was the one that I really didn't get into. I like raw black metal, but this is more like raw, kind of droning atmosphere, and the production is really raw. Like, raw to the point where it's just kind of a muddy mess. The vocals kind of go in and out in terms of like being able to hear them. The guitars are just kind of a steady static drone. There's not a tremendous amount of melody. I mean, it's all kind of like a dissonant melody. The drums are pretty much buried. Like, you can barely hear them, but I mean, it's kind of a static blast beat through every track in here. This is 3 tracks, and they're all pretty long tracks, and man, they kind of droned on forever. This felt like the longest release out of the batch. But again, I'm picky when it comes down to black metal, especially raw black metal. Like the raw black metal that I generally like is a little bit more like punky, more D beats, and you know, a little bit more production value. Like this is some really, really raw stuff. I mean, I'm gonna leave a link to it, let you check it out. But I just wasn't feeling this one, unfortunately. Though, I thank you again, Andrew Howard. You sent a cool batch of music. I appreciate all the stuff you gave me. And again, even though I may not like this one, I like the other stuff. And just because I don't like something doesn't mean you guys won't. Definitely check out all this stuff and form your own opinions. But yeah, this one wasn't for me. But still, check it out. Spore, Fungal Warfare Upon All Life. This is the debut EP from this Philly Death Doom band. Came out in 2019 on Blood Harvest Records. And I first heard about these guys courtesy of a split they did with Oxalate, Perpetuated, and Vivisect. I was already a big fan of Vivisect because I picked up their EP and heard these guys, and these guys do some really good atmospheric death doom. The vocals on here are actually almost more black metal, and it kind of gives it a bit of a black metal atmosphere, though I wouldn't say the riffs scream black metal. The riffs scream flat out incantation, hooded menace, very riffy sounding, and definitely has a lot of the hallmarks of Finnish death metal, but I mean, very comparable to bands like Tomb Mold or Cerebral Rot. Just pummeling riffs, really solid production. It doesn't overdo the reverb, it has just the right amount, and it still gives it this big full sound. And while this only has 3 songs, each song is a bit longer, more well thought out. This was, I believe, over 20 minutes on these 3 songs, or it was at least close to 20 minutes. Songs, again, well thought out, lots of cool dynamics in it. The atmosphere is just sort of suffocating throughout, and this is a really good starting point for this band. I'm definitely looking forward to any sort of future releases from them because I really dug this. So if you like death doom and just gritty, ugly, Finnish sounding death metal, definitely check this out. Coffin, Mulch, Septic Funeral. This is their debut EP, came out this year on Redefining Darkness Records, and this has an interesting story like right away. As soon as I got it, I didn't realize I got 2 copies of the same CD. Now, when I looked it up, apparently there are 2 prints of the CD, hence both of these. They're both different. They're not the same because the one I actually have on here actually has all the tracks. There is an edition where they didn't print out the 6th track, which is weird because it's the one called Coffin Mulch. And that was just sort of an error in printing, so they're sending out both copies. Now, this is stuff I got from Hell's Hatbangers. That includes Spore there too. And this is straight up old school death metal. Fierce 90s sound, kind of an HM2 tone, very gritty, very cavernous sounding, especially the vocals. The vocals might be too cavernous for the rest of the band, because the rest of the band, yeah, of course there's reverb on everything, but it's not as much as the dude's vocals. The vocals are a little too reverby. He sounds like he recorded his vocals in a sewer and they just kind of lowered a mic down and told him to stand like 20 feet at the end. It works for the atmosphere. Atmosphere is kind of a big part, but this is more like straight up like sort of DB kind of groovy death metal, very like Gate Creeper-ish, and it kind of has just kind of the wrong feel for it. It's just, again, too much. Now there's a litany of new bands that have that old school death metal sound, and there's lots of good ones. This one I think is good. It's just I want to hear them grow as they keep going on. This is a debut EP. This band is very young. This is their first release, and it's good. It just, you know, has some minor adjustments to make. But I certainly recommend checking them out, and if you get your copy on CD, let me know if you get both copies, because I still think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, definitely check this out. It's raw, gritty death metal, and if you like death metal, you'll probably like this. All right, we got a pair here from Decaying. We have The Last Days of War and One to Conquer. This is their second album, came out in 2013, and this is the follow-up that came out in 2014, so these guys were pretty busy. The sound overall for both albums, because I mean it's the same band, is old school death metal, very much in the vein of Asphyx and Bullthrower, and that kind of works with the theme. It's very war themed, though this is kind of interesting because it's 2 different wars. This is more World War I, maybe World War II, and then this one is almost more Cold War stuff, so different eras. That's kind of cool that it didn't say focused on one dreary part of history. It's 2 dreary parts of history. I swear I had to check the liner notes in this one because this was the first one I listened to just to see if Martin Van Drunen was on here, because the dudes, when he's doing that throaty, shredded Martin Van Drunen delivery, it sounded so spot on I thought it was him. And it's interesting because it's the same guy doing vocals, I believe. I mean, at least that's the only one they had listed. And he's able to alternate between a very low, just old school death metal roar into that shriek, and oh my god, man, it's just, I feel bad for his vocal cords, but man, it is absolutely effective. The music on this one is a little bit more groove oriented, loads of riffs. Jesus, these guys have riffs for days, and man, they know how to write some killer hooks. Passchendaele, especially, in Firestorm, they have some great galloping chugs. I mean, you're just gonna be banging your head nonstop to this. I mean, especially if you love Asphyx and all that shit. This is Groove City, Hook City, and both of these albums, actually all of their albums, kind of have a theme, with the last track being a giant banger that's longer than every other track, and both of them succeed there. Now this one, I can't tell if I like this one a little bit more, because this one's a little bit thrashier. It's a little bit more up-tempo, and I think the production is a bit better on here. I like the way the drums sound, especially. They're a little bit punchier, and the fact that you have more up-tempo stuff on here, I don't know, it kind of like livens it up. I love all the groove that's on here, but it's still on here, and I think there's still more up-tempo material on here. So, you know, good variance and a little bit more dynamics. Both of these absolutely rule. I have 2 other releases by this band, and they are remarkably consistent. I'm just missing their debut, which, believe me, I'm going to be looking for, because Decaying is awesome. Which, saying that out loud, is weird, but we're metalheads. We have to say weird things when we reference our bands, especially with names like that. I certainly recommend checking out both. I think this one is maybe a little bit better, but I love this one too. They're both good. That's the main thing. So definitely check them both out, because they're both awesome. Valgrind, Seal of Phobos EP. This is the second EP from this Italian death metal band. Came out in 2017, and this is, again, straight up old school death metal, though this is a little bit thrashier. This actually reminded me a lot of Altars of Madness. Like, it kind of has that early death metal sound, like the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, that's kind of where a good chunk of my death metal love lurks. Now, this is the EP that preceded Blackest Horizon, which I believe I covered in the last one, or at least one recently. I think it was the last one. I really love that album. This is also really good, though I think the production is not quite as good as it was on that album. The guitars feel a little bit dirtier, and while I generally like that, I really liked the production on Blackest Horizon, just because everything still sounded gritty, old school, very well mixed, very well balanced. This is a little bit muddier, but the songwriting is honestly what matters, and Jesus, this band is awesome. Now, I started off with their most recent release, and I really like that one. They started throwing in more like melodic death metal elements. I like their older stuff better, honestly. This old school death metal with really, really great lead work and great harmonies and just, you know, hooks left and right. I dig this just a bit more than what they're doing now. I like what they're doing now. I still think it's good, but this is just solid death metal, and I love this old school sound that's all throughout this. There's an interlude in between. It's okay. The 4 main tracks in here are absolutely banging, and if you love old school death metal with great thrashy hooks to it, this is really solid. Definitely check this out. All right, the next 3 in here are by the same band, and since holding up 3 CDs at once is a little bit more difficult, I don't want to drop one. We'll just go one by one here. And that band is Haunt. This is their album Flashback, came out in 2020, and this is, I believe, the first one that came out on Church Recordings. That is Trevor Church's own imprint now. He was on Shadow Kingdom Records, and now he is forging on his own, because this is also the first one that he did, I believe, entirely himself in the studio in terms of all the instrumentation and all the songwriting. I initially went to Bandcamp just to get the new one, and I ended up getting the stuff I was missing, because me being a completionist, yeah. But if you are unfamiliar with Haunt, they, or rather he, is an old school heavy metal act. It's pretty much like straight up like old school Iron Maiden, Angel Witch, Judas Priest, all sorts of stuff like that. Big riffs, but loads of melodies. Clean vocals, though vocals I'm still kind of on the fence about Trevor's vocals. He's a great songwriter. Like, this stuff on here is awesome. And the fact that he's starting to employ a little bit of like 80s synths on here, just like a little bit sort of peppered in there, it kind of just adds the whole throwback feel. But vocally, this one's not as strong, and that kind of is a continuing theme, unfortunately, with some of the stuff, because again, he has forged out on his own. He doesn't have other band members that he was harmonizing with in the studio, and I think he usually did harmonies with himself before, but he's definitely doing it now, and sometimes some of the harmonies are a bit of a miss. But the thing I like on here is there's a little bit of added aggression. There's a little bit more thrash metal to this, and a good chunk of these songs are actually very up-tempo and very energetic, and not like more of that like new wave of British heavy metal sort of gallop. It's more than just like a simple D beat. Solid stuff. I really enjoyed this one, and I hadn't listened to a Haunt album since, I believe, Mind Freeze, which, I mean, that wasn't that long ago, but I really enjoyed that one, though this is definitely different. You can tell this is just his project now. Granted, I think it pretty much was before, but this is all him on here, and a little bit of growing pains, but not many. Not enough to keep me from buying it, because I like this band. So yeah, definitely check this out. We also have Triumph, which was released in 2020, and yeah, he was busy. 2 full lengths in the same year. Now, granted, there should be like an asterisk on there, because this is all re-recorded material from their EPs Mosaic Vision and Luminous Eyes. I already own those, and I didn't necessarily look at the track listing to see that those were those songs again. But at the same time, this is him redoing those songs, just him. So again, sort of forging out on his own, and maybe he wanted to re-record those because he didn't like the way those were recorded. I don't know, I like those original versions. I thought they were really solid. It has that great throwback, sort of analog sounding mix. Granted, that's here too, and it does sound a little bit fuller. I just didn't see this as a very necessary release. But again, I bought it anyway, so you got me. And it isn't as though any of this is bad, because I've already heard these songs. I knew they were already good. It's just I don't see it as like super necessary, and I'm kind of wondering what the motivations were behind re-recording all the stuff. It's good stuff. I mean, if you own Luminous Eyes and Mosaic Vision, it's up to you whether or not you would want to get this. I think these versions do sound maybe slightly better, but maybe not enough to like go out and get this. That's up to you guys though. I may not see it as the most necessary release in the catalog, but it still was pretty good. So check it out. And then finally from Haunt, we have the newest album, Beautiful Distraction. This came out this year on Church Recordings / Iron Grip. So I guess there's a different label in there with distribution possibly. This is his second full length, forging out on his own just as a solo person in the studio. And this one's also good, though I think I like Flashback a bit better. I like the fact that he incorporated all the cool thrash elements, but I think this time he may have gone a little bit overboard on the keyboards. They just seem like they're a little too prevalent on here now, and it seems kind of being like a special, like, ooh, that cool moment had it. They're kind of more prominent on here now, and they don't necessarily add as much to the music. They're kind of just in the background and you kind of hear them. The thrashy elements, again, very, very prominent. Sea of Dreams and Imaginary Borders in particular just have tons of these cool thrashy riffs. Now, again, same complaint I have pretty much across most of the releases. The vocals are okay. It's weird. I'm either like really into them sometimes, or they're completely off-putting. There's really not like a middle ground. Sometimes he just nails a verse or a chorus and it just really resonates with me. And then other times, like, I don't know. Some of it kind of reminds me of like late 2000s emo a bit. Sorry, it just kind of is there. But overall, this is a pretty solid album. I do have to say, I don't know why there are also 2 re-recordings on here. Re-recorded Hearts on Fire from Mind Freeze, which I didn't see any problem with that song on that album. That should just be on that album. It's a killer song. Actually, it's one of my favorites on Mind Freeze. And then he also re-recorded It's in My Hands off of If Icarus Could Fly, which again, didn't see any reason to re-record that one because it sounded fine on that one. I thought that version was really good. So I don't know. I don't know the motivation behind all these re-recordings, but the original material is really good on here. I strongly recommend checking this out. I kind of like this thrashier turn they're doing, or he's doing. getting confusing with just being a one-man band now. But strongly recommend checking it out. Good classic heavy metal, a little bit of thrash now. Pretty fun listen. Check it out. And then finally we have Skeletal Remains, Beyond the Flesh. This is the 2021 Century Media reissue of this album. I actually have the original, came out in 2012 on FDA Records, at least the CD version did. And I love Skeletal Remains. I mean, I think most people know who Skeletal Remains is now, but if you don't, awesome old school death metal. God, it sounds so Floridian. It's just so thrashy and heavy and riff-oriented, giant hooks. They really don't have a bad album. Now, granted, they only have 4 full lengths, but all of them are good. They are remarkably consistent, and honestly, they keep getting better with each album. Not saying that this is bad. This is, in fact, absolutely awesome. This was the first one I ever picked up from them, and I was like, dude, this. Thrashy riffs, big hooks, kind of that dry Martin Van Drunen throaty delivery. He's kind of changed that a little bit. It's a less prominent dry delivery. He's got more growls in there now, like lower ones. But this whole album just whoops ass. Now, the main reason I got this was because it has the demos from 2011 for this album on here, and I just wanted to hear them. That was pretty much the main thing. I'm sure I could have looked them up online, but where's the fun in that? The demos absolutely whoop ass. I love the raw sound on them. They're really well done too. Just flat out amazing. I mean, you just have 4 tracks: Desolate, Isolation, Traumatic Existence, Sub-Zero, Termination, and Chronic Infection. All great songs on the album itself, and honestly, they don't sound that much different than they do on here, which I think is a testament to the really cool old school production on here. And then the other bonus track on here is a cover of Gorgut's Disincarnate, which has already played because I've been playing Gorgut in the background this entire time. And they did a killer job on that. This is absolutely awesome. If you don't own a copy of this and you've been struggling to find the CD version or any version of the original print, just get this. It's absolutely awesome. I mean, get any print you can because this band's incredible. But yeah, really solid work. They didn't try to remaster it and try to like polish it up. It sounds just as good as it did when I first got that album because there's no change. But yeah, definitely check this out. Skeletal Remains rules. That's pretty much all I got there. All right, well, that knocks out another one of these. The next one I'm going to do is going to be interesting because it's going to be themed courtesy of just one channel. Our buddy Crypt from Metalomania sent us a care package, and that contained a lot of stuff. So I just want to do that stack as, you know, a nice little trip to him, and definitely check out his channel on YouTube. He's also on Facebook. Just check out Metalomania. There's boatloads of fun. We love hanging out there. And of course, more stuff coming up this Saturday. Hopefully we are recording the Napalm Death ranking, and that has been hell to actually rank those albums because, man, they have a lot of good albums. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon, so if you'd like to help us out there, we would much appreciate it. There will be a link below in the description. And we have a giveaway going on. Once we hit 6,000 subs, we're going to give away a nice stack of 4 CDs. We are almost at 5,800, so that's coming up relatively quickly. So if you haven't gotten in on that, there will be a link below for that. Just comment on the video and you are in. It is that simple. So with that, I thank you all very much for watching, and we will catch you later.